letting the kind of participants level out first as we filter in through here. We're going to start it today. We got several guests on today, so we'll be working our way through. Welcome, Ryan Castle, CEO of the Cape Cod and Island Association Realtors, for our every other month this year, zoomed in on real estate virtually, where we kind of update you what's going on in the association, what you need to know for this month, but also talk to guests we bring in on various topics. And today we've got quite a few. I've got a presentation to get over, but then we're going to get into with our education programs director, Whitney McNamara, some updates on the state license renewal process that you'll need to know when you go to renew your license next time. Also, we'll be talking to the mortgage queen, Charlotte Green of the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod. We're going to talk about everything about how she can actually help your buyers get into homes right now. And also, then we've got a great agent panel wanted to put together of a couple agents in the business who do quite a bit of business, and also to get their perspective of what they're doing and what they're talking about and how they're adapting and thriving in this changing market. So wanted to hear from them too. So we'll be getting to them as well. I just got a couple updates I want to run you guys through real quick. One is our upcoming virtual CE schedule, as always, on our website. You're welcome to you can check it out, but we've got 2 classes in one more left in March, 2 in April, and then 2 more in May before we end up that one the first week in June. So every other week almost from here on out. And that Code of Ethics one is big on May 17th. If you haven't taken Code of Ethics for this cycle that ends at the end of next year, at the end of 2024, please go ahead and grab your Code of Ethics class that you need for renewal. It would be great. Also, our in-person CE schedule is March 29th is our first quarter date in person, and May 2nd is our second quarter date in person. We are doing in-person classes once per quarter as we have ramped up that online live webinar experience as well. So if you would like in-person courses as well, you can take these, and these are also the ones that can set you on the path to get your Cape Cod real estate specialist designation as well. I want to congratulate everyone who was accepted into our 2023 Leadership Academy. We have a great group. We started with their first session last week at the Cultural Center of Cape Cod in Yarmouth, and had a little reception afterwards with the alumni of the real estate of the Leadership Academy as well. But congratulations, you all. They are all extremely excited to get started into our Leadership Academy for this year. So thank you guys all for participating, and congratulations. If you haven't, I wanted to point out signing up for the Zoomed In on Real Estate Live Summit, Adapt and Thrive in a Changing Market, April 4th at the Quasset Resort in Harwich. It is all day long, starts in the morning, ends late in the afternoon with a reception, and we have packed it full of speakers all day and content. If you attended last year, you understand the packed in content we have. We have things from improving your business using systems to the National Association of Realtors Vice President of Research, Jessica Lotz, on the latest of what home buyers and sellers are thinking, to how AI can be put into your use in your practical real estate needs, and some things evolving in that AI world, to how to handle buyers in a changing compensation environment with all the latest there. Just a host of different sessions and great value there. So we will sell out, so make sure you don't wait until till the end to sign up for that as well. Cape Cod Real Estate Conference.com is where you can sign up for that as well. Also, we'll be highlighting in April Fair Housing Month. That is a national initiative from HUD to highlight fair housing in April. And so We will be rolling out a host of events around that, and one of the local events we'll be hosting around that is a Connect with Respect, which is a series put on by our Diversity Inclusion Committee. On Friday, April 14th at 10 a.m., they'll be doing a webinar, Understanding Assistance Animals. And so whether you're in the vacation rental world, the year-round rental world, or selling into condos, that sort of thing, condo complexes, I think understanding assistance animals is highly important in today's world. So make sure you understand that as well for open houses or anything else. There's a variety of ways where assistant animals come into play. So understand assistance animals on April 14th. You can sign up on our website for that virtual session we have right there with I believe Catherine Taylor, MAR, one of MAR's legal counsels there. Also, to highlight and to set the date for June 2nd is our state association's Realtor Day on Beacon Hill. And we'll be providing transportation from the CCIR office and from the Sagamore Park and Ride, and provide lunch that day, and getting back after 3-year absence of events on a day on Beacon Hill. So please take the time to put that on your calendar if you can make it. We'd love to have you. We'll have signups out soon for that. Also, just a reminder that the MAR legal hotline, staffed by now 4 attorneys, is now available to all members, not just broker members. So our attorneys are ready to assist you with your questions about current laws, court rulings, professional standards, or best business practices. So please feel free to reach out to them, 1-800-370-LEGAL, or legal hotline at MARealtor.com. And they will, Kate or Catherine, probably be most likely people to respond to you with your questions on the legal hotline. So just a reminder that expanded member benefit this year from the Massachusetts Association of Realtors that is now available to all members. And so I'm going to bring in Whitney McNamara, our education programs director, because there's some changes in licensing renewal now. And so she's getting a lot of questions, and when you go to renew, you're going to have questions that you haven't had to answer before. So Whitney, talk to me. So as someone goes to renew right now, they're going to be prompted with new stuff they have to input, not just, hey, I've taken my checkbox, I've taken my CE. So what is it that they're going to have to do now?
So now when they renew, after you attest to completing your education and all of the other requirements, they've added fields where you have to add each row individually. And when you add that row, you input that course information. So at the end of it, you should have 6 rows with 6 classes. And for each class, you'll need to put the school name. We have updated our certificates, so it's a little bit more clear, because most people do not know that our school name is actually the Real Estate Institute. But they do have us listed under Cape Cod and Islands Association Realtors as well. So either one should work, but I did want to clarify that our name is technically different. And then the course name, which would be the course ID, followed by the state approved name, which is on each of your certificates, the date you completed the course, and then the number of hours, which would be 2 continuing education hours per class.
All right. And so you'll have to do this obviously 6 times. To get your 6 classes in there.
Yes.
All right. And any other hangups other than the last part of the surety bond that we'll talk about as well? Any other hangups you're running in, members are running into as they try to do this process?
Just making sure that they have their continuing education certificates. So as a reminder, our member benefit is if you take classes directly through our real estate school, we keep a record of that information. And then we can provide it to you if needed. So let's say you lost your certificate for understanding flood zones, then I can reproduce that for you, provide you the information. If you took classes elsewhere, you need to be sure that you keep a record of those certificates so that when it is time for renewal, you can input that information. So that's really the only other hang up that we're seeing is that
yeah, and the one question we had I want to answer is that the Real Estate Institute is the name of the school. And Whitney, you'll put that in the chat after this session too, right? For people to have.
Yes. And it is on every one of our certificates. It always has been per the state regulations. But people may not have necessarily noticed it because our association name is there as well.
All right. And then the last piece for brokers need to know.
So this is a really big piece because I'm finding that most brokers do not have a copy of their surety bond on hand. And you will need to input your policy number and the issue date for your surety bond. They do also ask for the expiration number, but we're finding that in most cases they don't have one because they only expire if you stop renewing the bond every 5 years.
So what do you put in if that's the case?
It does allow you to leave that field blank,
Okay.
which is what I have been recommending, because if they need to, they can always pull up and ask for an actual copy of what you have and the policy number. And if for some reason you do not have a surety bond, for some reason, let's say that lapsed, you want to make sure that you get one as soon as possible, because all brokers, whether you are the responsible party or not, must have a surety bond in order to renew.
Okay.
And you did obtain one at the time of getting your broker's license as well.
Awesome. All right. And then there's a couple clarifications around the Pearl system with certificates and other things you wanted to let people know about. What are those updates you wanted to make sure everyone was aware of?
So just a reminder that we have launched Pearl, and if you're not familiar with it, that you do want to take a couple moments and play around in there. Also to make sure that you add your license number if you are taking our continuing education classes, because if you don't have your license number added, then you won't have a valid certificate with the state of Massachusetts. So it's really important that you add that in. Once you add it once, you never need to add it again. And that only certificates for CE classes after October of 2022 are in Pearl. So when we launch Pearl, anything after that date includes your certificates. If you're missing anything from before October of 2022, you would just need to email me and I can provide you a copy of those certificates for classes you took with us.
And the best email there is education@ccr.com to reach whoever's manning that email account for the day to get those certificates to you if you're out or busy. Also,
it would need to be me to provide them just because of how they're currently saved, but I typically can send them immediately.
Yeah. Also, Sharon had a question. She had heard that you now have to take specific courses for renewal. How is that being played out? Because it's always been in the law, it just hasn't been enforced. So what's going on there?
So it's always been in the law. It hasn't necessarily been enforced, but the state a few years ago updated the continuing education courses to fall into those different categories, and all of the classes fall into one of the categories, if not multiple categories. So you're still meeting those requirements by taking continuing education. They're just adding some clarification over where they want those areas to be. I think there's only one CE class that they don't have in a specific category, and that is not one that we typically offer.
Okay. All right. So, all right, great. Hope that answers everyone's questions. That seems to be all the questions that I was seeing in there as well. But Whitney, you'll put a little bit of that information to in the chat afterwards about where they can email to get certificates and the name of the school as well.
Yes.
So thank you very much for that update, because that is going to be really important, whether it's, it's only been happening for the last couple of months. So if your license renewal is not up for later this year or next year, you might even forget this. So we'll be putting this out there as many channels as possible. And our website has the latest resources as well to update this on as you go through because we know most everyone doesn't pay attention to this until they need to actually renew. So thank you guys for that.
We are in the process of updating our licensing renewal to resource to reflect this new information, and that should be out soon.
Yeah, and our drip campaign that you get as license renewals already coming closer is already updated as well, right?
We need to update that with the new information. One thing I did forget to mention that they also changed is that it did go from 90 days that you could renew early to now 60 days. So they did change that time frame as well. So we're working on updating the licensing resources to include the new video that just still needs some edits.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Whitney, for that. And I want to bring in Charlotte Green with the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod. Charlotte, want to talk to you a little bit for a few minutes about the banking world and the mortgage world, and how you guys at the Cooperative Bank right now are kind of helping people gain access to mortgages in this tighter lending environment. Not tighter, but maybe higher cost lending environment.
Yeah, thank you for having me today, Ryan. Over the past few years, we have had a lot of conversations about housing affordability, and the Cape and Island Association of Realtors and HAC have really been heavily involved in these conversations. And we at the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod have heard what you're saying, and we're seeing it as well on the lending side. Just that affordability for first-time home buyers, typical step-up buyers, and the people who are living and working in this community, who are so key to the vibrance of Cape Cod. So what we've been doing over the past couple months is taking a look at how we can help that affordability. So we are putting the final touches on some revisions to some of our existing products, such as our municipal product for people who work in the towns and work on the police force and fire departments, really looking to expand that eligibility and make a really, really competitive program for people who are living and working on Cape Cod without the typical capital A affordable income restrictions. So we are really, really excited to be rolling that out in the next couple of weeks. And if you'd like to get more information, please reach out to one of our originators on our website, or hopefully have some names saved in your phone already. But we're going to be really excited to be out there talking to you about this and seeing how we can help get more Cape Codders into homes at reasonable prices.
So what are some of those details? Can you talk about that yet? What exactly is going to be able to be accessible?
I can't give all the details, but we're looking at expanded debt to income ratios to help with that affordability issue. We're looking at reduced income rate, reduced interest rates, as well as really restricting this to Cape Cod workers, which has been, I think, a bit of the issue exasperating the housing prices.
Oh, so moving the program from municipal and first responders to kind of anyone who works on Cape Cod.
Yes, so including those municipal and first responders, of course, but also looking at people who work for for-profit businesses here on Cape Cod as well. So if you're living and working on Cape Cod, that's who this program is designed for. And we're looking to be just very liberal, kind of lower credit score requirements, no income requirements, looser debt to income ratio requirements to help people maximize their buying power.
Awesome. That sounds great. Any other updates you want to give people? What are you seeing out there? Any other trends you're seeing from the kind of loans you guys are giving out right now?
So what we're seeing, I mean, we're seeing a lack of listings right now, as everybody knows. So we're returning to a more normalized market where the January, February months have been pretty slow. I think we're a little bit slower than people would expect in a typical normalized market, but we're coming out of some really unprecedented times. We're seeing a lot of, those mid-range buyers during the COVID, really super low interest rates. We saw a lot of very high-end buyers financing. We're seeing a lot of transition back to cash with that. And
that's what I'm hearing a lot of, is that the high end, the really high end, and the entry level are the slower moving ones, and that mid range is what's moving. And maybe the agents will talk about that too in our panel in a little bit. But you're kind of seeing that same thing.
We're seeing the same thing, and we're seeing people look to close very quickly right now, just to insulate from further changes in the interest rate market and to get those properties closed. So consistently committing to really quick closing dates and being able to deliver and meet those, and just kind of seeing some funky properties out there. Lots of holdbacks going on right now. There's some of your great typical Cape Cod properties that are moving across the market. And we're glad to be able to help with them and consistently be meeting those quick closing dates and helping our customers get smoothly to the closing table and make a seamless transaction for our realtor partners as well.
Awesome, Charlotte. Thanks so much for joining us. And as always, talk about that new program or anything with the loans around for the Cooperative Bank Cape Cod. You have loan originators almost across the Cape at this point, and even off Cape, if you want to talk about how they can access them.
Yep. If you don't have contacts already saved, visit us online, mycapecodbank.com, or just reach out in the chat. We do have a couple folks on the call today. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to connect with you. And I'd be happy to connect as well if you want to reach out.
All right. Thank you, Charlotte, so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you all for having me today.
Thank you. And I want to bring in our main speakers for today. I thought I'd put together an agent panel to kind of see what people are thinking about, how people see the market in today's world, and how they're talking to their clients and what they're thinking about. So I put together 3 agents who do a ton of business themselves, but I think all 3 are unique because they also weren't around, and they weren't in the business, and weren't in the business in that 2008 to 2010 category as well, I believe. And so this is the first real big market shift in another way that they've seen. So I wanted to get their perspective of how they're seeing it. So we've got Tony Guthrie of Berkshire Hathaway, Robert Paul Properties, Tori Harrison from Sotheby's International Realty and Sandwich, and Paul McCormick at Gibson Sotheby's International Realty. So thank you guys 3 for being here. I appreciate it. Interested to hear you guys' insights and how you're tackling this market. So Tony, I'll start with you. For those that don't know you, which I don't know how most people might be in the business and not know Tony at this point, but Tony, can you talk about a little bit about your business and where you tend to operate and how that sort of thing to give the framework for everyone else?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan, for having me and for asking me to be a part of this panel. So I just some context. I started in the business in 2011, and I chose that time just because the market was still really bad on the Cape, and decided that if I could make it during that time, and cut my teeth while the market was bad, that things hopefully would work out, and they have. So the biggest, I was talking a little bit with Tori last night, we were texting, and the way I would describe this market for me is just confusing, because, and I don't think anybody really has a big handle on it right now. I mean, to back up for a moment, my business partner, Sharon Mobile, and I, we work as a team, and have for almost 8 years now. We work, while we focus on the lower Cape, our business model is a little different because we work all over the Cape. And in fact, I do a lot of business off Cape too. And that has worked well for us, especially now as the market has tightened, because it's hard to work in just one area and try to make a living. So, our business is very, customer centric, like a lot of people's, I'm sure is. But what we're finding is that there are still a ton of buyers out there. They have certainly they've calmed down a bit. And I think what happened, in my assessment, is the second half of 2022, people put the brakes on all price points, just because the market was shifting and interest rates were going up. And even people that didn't need to get a mortgage, I think the uber wealthy also, when they see interest rates going up, they take a step back because that's how they live and work. So this last few months, I think starting at the end of 2022 to now, we've certainly seen, more activity, both with, buyers coming back to the market. And I think there were people that during the pandemic took a step away from the market because it just got so insane. And they were, it got to the point that people were like, let's just take a break and we'll re-enter when things calm down. And I think there's a big group of people that are coming back now that things have calmed down. They have a different attitude, and the challenges, you've got buyers who starting to think they're in the driver's seat, and you've got sellers who are still kind of in the driver's seat, but not as much as they were. And so the conversations are saying, look, if this were a year ago, and I'm sure a lot of agents are saying, if this were a year ago, we'd be having a different conversation. But the market has shifted. So people are, buyers are looking for home inspection contingencies and things that kind of got tossed out the window for the last 2 years. So we make it a point to, in fact, Sharon and I have done this a few times where we 6 or 8 months ago gave an opinion of value on something, and right before the house has gone on the market, we've had to go back and reassess the property and say, we're not at that number anymore. And we're not that your house has lost value, but just that the market conditions have changed enough that we should take this approach. And for us, we use, through the 2 approaches of like at or below market value pricing, or being a little more aggressive, and we try to get people at or below market value to create that urgency for people to buy. I think, as the last person with the bank said, inventory is we're kind of in a bit of a crisis because there's still not a lot of movement. I felt like we were seeing a little of that change, and I still think we are, but I don't think it's going to be many years before we get to the numbers we were at before the pandemic, because, people are holding on to their homes for any number of reasons. And I think that's the biggest challenge is getting people to want to put their houses on the market, because there's where are we going to go? And so we've had to start building a different scenario for people that are putting their houses on the market, which is, look, we can put, and people use this all the time, subject to the seller finding appropriate housing, which works, but a lot of this language that we use sometimes doesn't make any sense at the end of the day. It's like the language of houses being sold as is. Well, we know that you can put that all day long until a home inspection comes in. So I think it's a lot of communication with the seller, with the buyers. Sharon and I still say to them, it doesn't matter what the market is telling you. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It's what this house is valued to you, because there are still, while it's less so, there are still a lot of places that are going for over ask, because there's no inventory, far fewer. And it feels like it felt when I first got into the market in 2011, which is a lot more handholding and just being an advisor. I mean, the market the last few years was fun because there was a lot of money involved, but it wasn't good because it was unsustainable. And we as agents, I think, didn't do the best job sometimes dealing with each other, and with our, it's hard to advise sellers and buyers. So it's back to very basic stuff. I know that there's always this ability to want to find a quick answer. I mean, the way we live today, everything's, you click a button and you get something in the mail on the same day, and so that's all instant. And in our world, in real estate, it's not like that. It is years of grinding away and showing up and doing a lot of stuff that is a drag, quite frankly. It's like, I haven't been in the office in years. I don't go to the office because for me, it's about being out with people and making myself available so I don't sit at the desk. And that works for a lot of people. It doesn't work for me. Again, my business partner, Sharon, and I constantly think of ways that we can engage people, not even in the real estate world, in other ways that are interesting, and whether it's with our pets or volunteering or whatever, that have zero to do with real estate. And although that always seems to come into play, so we do a lot of reading of publications like Banker and Tradesman, Boston Business Journal, things like that, to see what the trends are. And quite frankly, as we all know, real estate is so hyper local that it's confusing to people, because I think buyers are seeing that nationally there are places where prices are going down, but where we are in Massachusetts, we're lucky they're not going down. So it's having that conversation with buyers to say, don't think there's, the house that was 800,000 is going to be 600,000 any day soon.
All right, Tony, let me move into some others here, and we'll get back to you in a second on some of these other things. Tori, can you talk about a little about your market, your specialty, and then kind of how you see today's market in the area that the area of real estate you live in?
Absolutely. So Tori Harrison, Sotheby's International, out of the Sandwich office. I focus all over, but my main focus is on the Upper Cape and right over the bridge. Similar to what, Tony's talking about, I describe it as a changing market. Right now, we have very little inventory, which was similar to last year, but we have a different perspective from sellers and buyers right now. So there are homes that are being listed and they are going under contract very quickly, and some for over asking. But what I'm seeing is those homes are perfection. They have an amazing location and they're priced well. And that's what's drawing those buyers in to look at those properties and having them put an offer in. Homes that do need some work and are not new, like we're seeing on HGTV, those are the properties that are stumbling a little bit. But unfortunately, the sellers still really want their price and they feel that they're in a good position because of inventory. So really, I deal with a lot of new construction, which is great because it is all newer and turnkey, ready to go. But even that there's a lot of buyers that are apprehensive, as Tony had mentioned, we're seeing these home inspections come back and we're seeing them come back with a vengeance. There are some cash buyers, but I'm experiencing a lot of home sale contingencies right now, which we did that years ago and it works out.
And where are the home sales contingencies coming from? Are they more Metro Boston area? Like, are they on the Cape?
So I have,
because you got to be worried about what that market's like.
Exactly.
Where they're selling it at.
Yeah.
Right?
So I had one from Virginia and that went under agreement, their condo, before I even realized it was active. So that was great. With, a quick closing and closing the end of the month. And then we have another one that's a second home down Cape that had, some great progress this weekend. So looking forward to them receiving an offer. So I think it's all about price. And if these buyers are really wanting to implement a home sale, just making sure that they're strategic with what they're pricing their homes at. And their offers look very nice. The ones that they're presenting on properties, they look similar to offers that we might have seen last year versus
just home sale contingency. So that's why they're just kind of upping that better offer because they've got that big pill at the end of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm seeing really from late fall into currently. I have 2 right now that are, going to close with having a home sale contingency.
Awesome. Paul, and Paul, you want to describe your market a little bit and what you're seeing out there right now and that sort of thing?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Great to be here and alongside Tony and Tori as well. We've done business together and wonderful to be here. A few things about me too. I work full-time out of Chatham. I work with my mother, Chris, and fiance, Molly. I know some of you might say, oh my God, why? But we make a great team and it all works really well. And we tend to focus Dennis to Orleans. That tends to be our marketplace.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And, I agree with everything that Tony and Tori have said. We've got buyers who tend to be a little bit more savvy. I've been seeing a little less tire kickers in the market. I think they're staying home a little bit more. I got into real estate in 2018. I did that entire year with 0 business, but I did a lot of uptime. I did a lot of listening and learning, and I started working with a lot of buyers who tended to be time wasters, but I learned from them too. So I think this market has educated us to really identify who is ready to buy and who is, watching and learning, but should stay on the sidelines. So, they're a bit savvier. They're pulling field cards. They're looking at days on market. Recently I've had a couple of properties where we've discussed, do we wait for the 90 DOM to clear? It's not, just get it on the market. I mean, people are down here. There's no sense in that. You can see it on Zillow. Another thing I'm dealing with sellers is this new assessment everyone's received from this COVID bump. And so a couple of my sellers, I mean, they've got a $250,000 bump in their assessment, which would have normally been maybe 40,000. So they show that number. And if a property is, was assessed at 1.3 and now it's assessed at 1.55, how should I be priced now? And I tend to take those, what I'm calling COVID assessments, and I kind of cut them in half because, we're coming towards a bit of a reset. And I think you got to take those numbers with a little bit of a grain of salt. We're seeing more home inspections, which aren't a bad thing. But I think if the property is priced correctly, it will be successful, and you'll move forward with it, and you'll go under contract. A couple of things is that we're in a second home market. We're less susceptible to the market change, like a bit over the bridge. Looking at Metro West, I'm glad we sell on the Cape. We have a driver here where we have year-round people and we have second home people. So we have the best of both if you're a Cape Cod agent. You just got to work it really hard. We've done more in the last couple of months than I've done in my entire career. But a couple examples of that is we have a closing in Sudbury going on right now. We have a deal in Mashpee. We have a deal in Falmouth. So, we've been able to branch out and work with our buyers, and of course where they may begin, which looking at Harwichport or Chatham or Orleans, where it's a rarity when something comes on, we're able to branch out and find them something else.
Yeah, that's a great question I have for all three of you. Tony and Paul, when you start with a buyer on the Lower Cape, are they moving back closer to the bridge as prices have gone up? Are you finding that a lot? And Tori, obviously starting on the Upper Cape, are you going over the bridge more often? I'm hearing that so much more, that to get what they want, they're having to branch out of where they want to be much more, and they're finding it's much more house than location lately. Is that what you're finding a lot of? Any of y'all three want to chime in?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tori. Go ahead.
Definitely. So as you know, I am mainly on the Upper Cape, but yes, I have had many transactions over the bridge just from a price point standpoint. That for initial first time home buyer, having to go into Plymouth to find something in under 400 range, which we know is pretty unachievable here on the Cape. I deal with a lot of military families, with the base being here. And I actually sold a home in Kingston a few months ago, and she'll be commuting to Joint Base Cape Cod from Kingston and she had a higher price point, but what she was able to achieve for just a bit under $1 million in Kingston, the home would have been 1.213 here. So she's happy to do the commute and have that size home in Kingston.
And Tony, how about you?
So it's more these days with lack of inventory. People are buyers are absolutely willing to look at other places. I mean, they're just because of the inventory thing. As Tori said, with first time home buyers, definitely I end up a lot of times off Cape, but with higher end people, it's more about finding the right house with the right amenities, so that's why we end up wherever we end up. So there's a lot more of that.
Yeah, it seems like it used to be on the Cape. I want to be in this specific area, of this village, or this subdivision. And it seems like people are willing to, in this light inventory, willing to open their eyes a little bit more to the other places.
Mm-hmm. And
Paul,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Paul.
I was just going to say, and to add to that, I think it's important to also speak to value where they're looking on Cape Cod. So part of our job, now that it's cooled off a little bit, but only so much. I mean, it's still it still is a busy market. And to Tori's point, if it's priced correctly and it looks great, it's still moving in a weekend. But I think, I've dealt with a lot of buyers who, I just recently had one looking in Dennis, and, it was under $1 million. It was a project, but, it's never going to be under $1 million in a project in 2 years from now. I mean, it's going to be 1,150 in a project. So, these value, if you can speak to and be, the expert in your area for your buyer, I know you don't like 7% of an interest rate, but if you can sleep at night and, you can make this thing work, it's a great value, because that project at $1 million is worth 1.6 in, 6, 7, 8 years. So, to buy in and jump on it, we sell a lot of finite property on Cape Cod. And, yes, I see them cooling off a bit, but they're definitely not going south. And so a lot of buyers are able to get comfortable with, where they're buying and where they're going to park their money. I mean, we're great brokers here, but it's not just real estate, it's also parking money. So they're looking to us for a bit of education as to what is the best neighborhood to park it in.
Yeah, finding values is a good key way to phrase that. Tony, how about you on this whole conversation?
One of the things we have started to talk to especially buyers about is that this probably won't be their forever home, that they shouldn't, whether it's their second home or primary, like, look, the statistics are 5 to 7 to 10 years people move. So if you want to get in the game on the Cape, then, you want to make sure it's nice and you love it, but that this is probably one of a few homes you'll end up with. And with the interest rates, the same thing. We talk about, look, maybe the 30-year isn't the way to go. Do something with an ARM, because you're probably either going to sell or refinance if interest rates happen to tick back down. So the conversation is all about buyers' flexibility, and not because buyers come in, and Tori said it, there's the world of HGTV, that everything's perfection. And of course we sell this dream on Cape Cod. So it's this tightrope of, like, as Paul mentioned, buying something that has some value, that needs some money and some, sweat equity, or just equity, just some fixing up, or just, that, we're, advisors, and so it's a different conversation than you're going to be in this house forever. Buy this one, and in a few years you're going to, when the market, whatever happens, but you'll be able to buy something else.
Yeah, finding out value seems to be the key on that. Back to Paul's point about the assessments and seeing that, obviously also, well, that house down the street got this in 2021, or this and 2020 or whatever else. How are you handling those situations when you're talking to sellers, right? Because obviously you guys are going on a lot of listing appointments. You guys are, handle a lot of listings too. So it's like, in the last 6 months, how are you handling the seller expectations? Because as you guys have all talked about, it's not the same market for them. It's not an awful market, but it's just a different one. So, I say, tell everyone what their price was in February 2020, and still pretty good appreciation from there. But how are you guys handling that, Tori?
So I just talk, I think we can all agree that we hit our peak last year, and we're definitely coming down a bit. But with the low inventory that we're still currently having, and we look at our median home price and we compare that to 2 years ago, there is a drastic increase that all of these sellers still have. They all have a great investment that they're currently sitting on. So even though they might not be achieving the absolute top of the market where some of those sellers did, they're still going to get a great number if they price it properly, and hopefully it's in excellent condition. So, that's what I'm telling all of my sellers right now, and really explaining to buyers as well when they are coming in and they're dealing with their 7% interest rates and wondering why that home isn't selling, or they want to put these very, very low offers in that aren't even, being countered right now. There's value here. Buyers want to be here, not even just for second homes, but for for primary residences now because work life has changed. So we're still seeing that strong value. It's just not as strong of a price as it once was. And then secondly, if we look back at early 2020, you know, I feel like it started Easter Sunday 2020 is kind of when our market dramatically changed. There's a lot of people that made decisions in 2020 for second homes, and it might not have been the right decision. And they might be, you know, calling to find out what the market analysis is on their house right now, or anyone should be reaching out to those past clients that they sold in 2020. They have a lot of value in their properties. And if they're coming back on the market, there's some serious equity there if they feel that their Cape Cod purchase didn't exactly work out. Family life, they couldn't get here as much as they wanted. They really wanted, you know, take their money out of Cape Cod and move it to Florida. So really reach out to those clients that, you know, we did sell those homes to see where they stand on those properties.
Tony, how are you talking to those sellers at this point?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to, you know, what Tori said, but also just having very frank conversations, because Tori mentioned, you know, houses needing to be in almost perfect condition for them to get the top dollar. And I think that's important for all of us as realtors to have very frank conversations with our clients, our seller clients. I think the problem is that we're all trying to vie for these listings. So sometimes we're not as upfront.
Once you get that thing signed, then you can have more frank conversations.
But I don't think it does us anybody any good to delay the bad news of like, hey, your house needs, you know, a lot of work and someone else is going to have to do that work. And sellers forget what things cost. You know what I mean? When they did it 30 years,
they may not even know in this world, right?
Right. Well, that's just it. So it's, I always say it's a slow walk to reality with sellers oftentimes, and it can be bumpy, and it back to reminding them that, you know, they're still in a very good position and they're still going to make a lot of money and all that. But one of the what Paul said about the assessments, when I first got into the market in 2011, the reverse was going on with assessments, where sellers were actually going to the town and saying, our house has lost so much value, but we want the assessment to go up because there was this big delta between what the, you know, asking price and what the assessment was. So we would encourage sellers back then to go and get their assessment bumped up because, you know, it was hurting them on the sales side. So it's amazing how things have changed so much in the past 10 years, 11 years. So anyway, it's, again, back to the sellers, be completely frank in a nice way without, you know, and just kind of repeating yourself over and over again, because they don't always listen the first time.
Yeah, I'll just remind everyone, you know, when your sellers bring up assessments, tell them that's what government thinks their house is worth, not what professionals think their house is worth. So, you know, kind of like an algorithm, right? As well, right? You know, it's not real. It's just a starting point to have real conversations with people like you guys. Paul, anything on this to kind of jump in on?
No, I agree with everything said. I tell sellers, you know, you be the buyer. You know, how would you approach this property? Let's walk in from the driveway. I think it's important to create that list of improvements that they've made. And obviously, you know, we, the realtors, need to maybe tweak those lists when they write something like added, you know, gutter downspouts. But, you know, we're there to help them. But, you know, I think I like to slow down the pricing and roll out conversation about the property with the seller, because it's just that first opening window is so important, and to have a real price that, you know, I say to sellers, you know, a buyer wants to feel like they've got a win too. So, you know, let's keep it fair, and you'll be successful.
Awesome. So in today's kind of market, you know, with such low inventory and some buyers holding back too, Tori, what's the one thing you're doing every day or every week to try to keep that business flowing?
So it's constant communication with our current clients. So, definitely talking to them and explaining what's going on, but, having that positive spin on it, because we want our buyers that might have taken a step back to come back to the table. So really in communication with them, sending them new listings, price reductions outside, as we're talking about kind of moving outside of our comfort zone. So really looking in other markets where you feel like, they could potentially buy. Sometimes they don't want to be in a certain town, but really sending those listings to them. And just, working your sphere. Just, I know that it's tough out there and everyone is looking for inventory. So really working that sphere and seeing what opportunity is out there to bring more inventory to the market, because everyone will be successful at that point.
Tony, how about you? What's the one thing you're doing every day to kind of keep that business going?
I do a lot of reading and periodicals, and people love to get little articles. So same thing. I send things to people daily, different stories about real estate, and it's constant communication. But it might not always be about real estate. It's just hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. How are things? How's whatever? So I think it's just reaching out to everybody and anybody in large and small ways.
And Paul?
I used to fundraise for candidates and causes before I got into real estate. And whenever I would call a donor for a commitment, if you're only checking in with that donor to get the donation, they're less likely to want to work with you. So I often check in with our clients and those who have done referrals to me, even agents or past clients, and just check in, send them the house that sold around the corner from them, ask them how are the rentals booking out at that summer home that you sold them. So, it doesn't always have to be about the next transaction. And just work the sphere to Tori's point. I mean, it's amazing how many people that you just got to touch base with them a little bit more, and everyone has time. So, find time for it.
Yeah, awesome. Where are y'all seeing the different price points right now? So it seems like late last year, the numbers kind of showed the high-end luxury, the ultra luxury, I guess. I mean, where are y'all pricing it now? 2+, is that kind of it? And then 1 to 2, and then under 1 as more entry level. Where are you guys seeing the price points? And it seemed like the high-end luxury kind of stopped toward the end of last year, slowed down drastically. And obviously, with the mortgage rates increasing, the entry levels, the year-round buyer, right, is obviously more affected by that. More on the entry level, and the mid-range, as Charlotte was talking about, it seems to be what has the most momentum right now out there in the market. Are y'all seeing that same thing, or is the higher end coming back in? What do you see, Paul?
The higher end is certainly coming back. They took a real cool off from October to December. And to Tony's point in the beginning of the call, I mean, they were watching rates and the market, and they know it better than us. So I get why they would cool off, but they're back around. We've had some more big fish buyers coming down to the Cape looking at larger property, but it's definitely cooler. I mean, things north of 2.5, 3, they're not moving as fast as they did in the past, but they're coming back around. And those properties are being shown. Anything, I don't know, 625 to 895, that's money. I mean, those are and priced well and show well. Those are typically still under agreement by Monday. So
yeah, lower to outer Cape. I mean, are you kind of, it's that 625 to 895 is kind of that entry level out there at this point?
Yeah.
And then what do you in the mid range? What do you consider starting at luxury now?
Well, if you can get it under a certain bracket, that's helpful. And to my point earlier, it makes that high ultra buyer feel like it's more of a win. I mean,
So kind of like 9 to 2 million is kind of that mid range at this point.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, Tony, how about you? How are you seeing the higher end market and the different segments of the market right now?
Yeah, so it's so bizarre to think entry level is 800 to, but Yeah, that market is.
I mean, in Chatham, Orleans, out the
But I
Outer
think-
Cape, it totally is at this point.
Yeah, it is. But I think that price point is probably one of the busiest price points Cape wide right now because there's so little of it. And it, for a lot of people, the people that, a year and a half ago could afford $1.2 million are probably now in the 900 range if they're looking for a mortgage because rates have gone, like it's kind of affected them where there might be a little under $1 million now. The luxury stuff seems to be definitely back. It'll be interesting to see how things pan out with this bank that has just gotten into trouble because that seems to be having a bigger effect just psychologically.
And they also had a big presence in Boston. I mean, 6 of their 13 branch locations for Silicon Valley Bank were in Boston. So there could be some fallout there.
So, yeah, I think that it's just, again, it goes back to a mood, 2 years ago when, every day was like the Feline's wedding dress sale on the Cape for houses. The same thing happens when something like a bank failure happens where it's just like, 2008, and so it'll be interesting to see. But for now, that luxury market is pretty robust again. All over.
All right. And Tori, what are you seeing over there on the Upper Cape? Obviously, I think the entry level is a little lower than it is on the lower to outer. So
Yeah, so we definitely have a little bit
5 to
different.
750 range, right?
Correct. So 750 and under, very, very busy market. And then, when we're talking luxury, I'm really seeing that picking up a lot. So definitely challenging high 8s to 1.2 range. And then with the perfection and location over 1.2, those properties are definitely getting quite a bit of interest these days.
Okay. Yeah, so that mid-range is kind of the struggle point on the Upper Cape. So it's kind of different than that lower outer.
Right. And I think it really comes down, to interest rates again.
Yeah, exactly. Where people are buying has that interest rate effect. Because if you were buying at 1.2 6 months ago, you might be buying at 8 now. Yeah, as Tony said. Really interesting. All right. Let me see. I think I have a question coming in. No, handled that one. All right. Well, any closing thoughts about how you're handling the personal mindset, right? Because obviously you're not going to do as much business this year as you did last year, or 2020, 2021 personally. So, any tips and insight you can give to other agents about how to handle, your personal mindset at this point, moving forward and be positive. Tony, I know I can count on you for some how to be positive, right? So.
Look, I think that in a market like this, there's tons of opportunity. And I would say for agents, don't wait for your brokerage firm. You've got to go out and engage like what we do. We are engaged with people all day long, reaching out to people, as everyone said, and just showing up and kind of, for me, it's really just about engaging with our past clients, our future clients, and staying active with, charitable stuff and stuff like that, because you never know where your business is going to come from. But this isn't the time for wait and see and sitting in the office hoping the phone's going to ring.
Well, the one bright spot too, I will say about the stats for February that we now have on our website is pendings were only down 1%. So that's like the first month we've really seen pendings kind of flat. So it seems like February kind of picked up in activity a little bit. It seems like, so it looks good. Tori, what's that mindset you're using to stay positive for 2023?
Very similar to what Tony said. So really, that communication piece, like the last 2 years, we were really just living from that one transaction to the next. It was just so crazy. So I really feel like we need to get back to basics now of what we used to do. And, that communication with our clients, our past, our future, helping on the board, charitable organizations, really spending time with family. So that's really what I'm focusing on. And I think, it's a little, challenging out there, as we know. So really just working with your peers on the other side. We kind of lost that the last few years because we were all so busy. So it is challenging, and just making sure that the transactions that we are having, we're just taking care of each other out there.
Awesome. Paul, how about you? What's that mindset you're trying to keep for a positive 2023?
I totally agree. I think it's important to stay positive. I mean, we're in the best marketplace in New England, in my opinion. Look at where we live, and this is what we're selling. And clearly, you know, we all got into this business because we have connections and we have a sphere, and it certainly grows as you continue business. But, you know, I sit on a number of boards. I live in Dennis. I'm on the planning board. I'm involved in some philanthropic things on the Cape. You know, you keep networking, keep working at it, and get out of the office. You know, go meet the neighbors. Go, you got to just work your spheres, and it will. I think we're gonna have another great year.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone else found it as valuable as I did. So thank you guys, Tony, Tori, and Paul, for taking the time today.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks, guys. All right, that's it. We'll get this recording out to you guys. Thank you for taking the time, and we'll be back with Zoomed In on Real Estate virtually in May. And please sign up for our live Zoomed In on Real Estate Live Summit, April 4th at La Quasa. So thank you guys very much. Have a great day. Thank you.